According to WTO advisors, no-deal Brexit is now the main option, the European Commission panic, and the Remainer lawyer, Jolyon Maugham, takes his anger out on a fox. Hello everybody, I hope you had an amazing Christmas. We are officially back. In the words of Jim Moriarty, did you miss me? Now we have a lot to cover in today's video when it comes to Brexit. Obviously, as you know, 31st of January is the date when we stop being a full member of the European Union, and we have until December 2020 to negotiate and sign a trade deal with the EU. And one of the best things that Boris Johnson has done since he won his recent election is that he's made extending that transition period illegal, which means there is just the next 12 months deadline for both sides. And the European Union aren't too happy about this because obviously they want us to be politically aligned because it's a very complicated situation with the EU when you want to sign a trade deal with them. Ideally speaking, they want you to be basically an EU member without being a member. And this pressure that Boris Johnson has created is not going to make things easier. Now, we have a lot of so-called trade experts and trade lawyers who are kind of panicking about this whole situation. David Tinline, who used to be a senior advisor to the World Trade Organization, has come out and expressed his concerns. So David Tinline has said that if you're going to set a hard time limit, you're going to reduce the level of ambition to the point where it's been described as a bare bones agreement. There was no prospect of the EU permitting a zero tariff, zero quota deal unless it largely adhered to the EU standards, despite the fact that Boris told the Commons last Friday that there would be no alignment with Brussels. Now, David Tinline has basically stressed that striking a deal is possible if you're happy to do whatever is asked of you from the EU. But not everybody is going to be happy about the result. If you go in there trying to drive a hard bargain under a self-imposed deadline, then you're not in a very strong position. Now, this is where it's wrong, and we're going to talk about this in this video. There's a lot to cover about the EU mentality. Now, but before we actually continue, there's been a lot of issues on YouTube. Some of you are actually getting automatically unsubscribed by YouTube. It's just a new AI system that they have accidentally. They're trying to obviously get rid of the fake accounts or the inactive accounts, but it's actually affecting a lot of other people. So make sure if you're watching these videos, every now and then double check to see if you're subscribed. And if you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and click on that bell next to it so you get notified when we release a new video. We've even had, now going back to the subject, we've even had a number of other European Union figures, including our favourite and arrogant Vice President of the European Parliament, saying this.
It is possible, but only if you stick to a lot of rules that we already have. So if you say UK is going to stick to a lot of standards and rules, or is going to go for similar agreements like Canada, like Norway, like whoever, then that is possible. But if you start negotiating on every single issue, then this is absolutely not doable.
Well, we knew that from day one, and that's the problem with the European Union. And when it comes to trade, I am absolutely more than happy and prefer to go out on WTO terms and no deal, because they don't want to actually sign a proper, normal free trade agreement. They want you to be politically aligned. They want you to actually take their standards, because as we've said many times, when a country signs a trade deal with another country, they essentially, most of the time, they go with mutual recognition of their standards, whereas with the European Union, you have to accept their standards. They have a set of rules, you have to go with theirs, otherwise it's not going to happen. And in this case, I would rather go out with WTO terms until they realize that they need us more than we need them. Now, this David Tinline guy has been saying a lot of things. He's also basically stated that imposing a December 2020 deadline will focus minds in Brussels. So yes, there is a pressure on Brussels. He's also said that he finds it hard to see how it increases our negotiating power, other than it may help the government with its domestic audience to then explain away concessions that it may need to make in order to meet this deadline. At a time when, frankly, the opposition is going to be weak and you're having a lot of attacks on the media, this is basically the situation. So their argument and their mentality is that because we've set this deadline, the UK has set this deadline, December 2020, then it's going to be the UK who's not going to be benefiting from it. In reality, it's the exact opposite. This is exactly a Trumpian style of trade negotiations. We are putting pressure on the EU for once. Over the last 3.5 years and 4 years, basically, it's always been the EU who had the upper hand. This is the first time that we are in the position of power, and it's actually going to be put pressure on them, not us. And these people don't actually understand this. Now, besides, this whole trade arguments that these people make, they don't actually understand that the concept of Brexit, the whole point of Brexit, was about taking back control of our sovereignty and democracy, for God's sake. It's always been about the main concept of who does your paperwork, Brussels or Westminster. It was never supposed to be about, okay, are we going to be voting leave or remain based on how much we're going to be stronger economically, or are we going to be declining short term or medium term? Obviously, there's always going to be bumps when it comes to any change. Any change in a country will have some short term changes, whether good or bad. But the concept is long term for the country, as a sovereign country, as a democratic country, and they don't understand this. This is why Michael Caine, one of my favorite actors, back in 2016, when he voted leave, said this.
I voted for Brexit. I look at it in the final thing, and I tell you what it is with me, is I'd rather be a poor master than a rich servant. You know, politics is always chaotic, because in politics you're always going into areas where you've never been before. So you're going to get lost, and then you're going to find your way, and then it'll be all right.
Yes, I would rather be a poor master than a rich servant. And Brandon O'Neill also made a very good point on Politics Live.
What people need is for their votes to be respected. What people need is to have a serious democratic voice. That's what working class people in this country have fought for 150 years. And I think Labour's policy in relation to all of this is, well, there are far more important things than Brexit. There are far more important things than you having your democratic vote respected. What about getting bread on your table? What about making sure that you can get the bus to work and so on? It's so patronising, because the entire nature of the Labour movement and the left movement in this country has been to secure a democratic voice for working people. And what I find really shocking about the current situation is that someone like Dominic Cummings reflects that far better than Jeremy Corbyn does. And that's something that should worry Labour a great deal.
It's not patronising to stand up for working.
Now, these WTO, former WTO advisors, are also expressing concerns when it comes to the US-UK trade deal with Donald Trump. They've also suggested that Boris Johnson, if Boris refuses to grant US companies more NHS access and likewise refuses to amend standards for agricultural products, then it's not going to happen. Now, this fear-mongering when it comes to healthcare in America. Okay, not that I have no problem with American companies having access to our pharmaceutical sector. I actually want them to have access. We need free market. We need competition. It's not going to be in a case where somehow, if there's a trade deal with America, things are going to be more expensive. It makes absolutely no sense. Free trade doesn't do that. Free trade brings down costs and prices. And we've seen it historically over the last 200 years, 300 years. It's never happened when it's going to be going backwards. And but these people know this. I don't know why they're so obsessed with treating America the way they treat the European Union. America is more likely to accept mutual recognition than us accepting their overall standards. And and also luckily we have President Trump in office, who's actually a friend, rather than having a Democrat like Obama or Clinton. So this is a situation. The America deal is actually completely different to the EU. So let's not panic about that. Now, we have heard some good news. There's an American think tank who's given some signals, and this is my thoughts as well when it comes to the December deadline. It is going to be almost impossible. It was very, very difficult for both sides to sign a full free trade agreement, but it could happen. But there are two options at the end. We're either going to be leaving on WTO terms, or the likely scenario will be we're going to have a very skinny version of a trade deal based on goods and products, and which is basically what Remainers have always been signaling about, because their problem has always been about, what if our products and avocados and everything becomes more expensive? So if we have a skinny version of a trade deal in the meantime, and temporary version, that's absolutely fine. And this is what they've said.
There are as you put it, zero sum. But I think there'll be dynamic negotiations for that reason. As I said before, I think the EU one will take priority and precedence, and therefore the kinds of agreement we've made with the EU will affect the negotiations with other countries. But I think, to me, it looks like that the initial position, at least, will be heading for what you might call a skinny deal with the EU based on goods and maybe certain sectors in particular, which could leave a fair amount of flexibility to make deals with other countries.
But on the other hand, the EU Commission and Ursula Von Der Leyen is panicking. She's basically demanded for both sides to extend that transition. Ursula von der Leyen is calling for the UK government and the EU, obviously, to genuinely consider extending that December 2020 deadline, because she knows that they're not going to make any concessions. Because if they do that to the UK, then they're going to have to do it with every other country in the world. Yeah, good luck with that. We have a majority government now, so you're not really in charge anymore. And this is the whole situation with the Remainers panicking. Now, speaking of Remainers panicking, we have our favourite pro-Remain lawyer, Jolyon Maugham, who hasn't had a great Christmas this year on Boxing Day. Now, obviously, a few days before Christmas, there was this meme that was going around on social media with politicians and, well, Remainers being compared to animals. We have, obviously, Joe Swinson and a squirrel. And we have Jolyon Maugham, who's been compared to a fox. Now, this is ironic because on Boxing Day, Jolyon Maugham actually tweeted himself that he woke up and he has a house in an urban area with some chickens for some reason. And in order to protect his chickens, with a baseball bat, he decided to go after a fox. So that poor fox, he ended the fox's life, and he decided to boast about it on Twitter. Now, obviously, it's against the law, but he's a lawyer. He should know this. In an urban area, you can't really go after and attack foxes with a baseball bat. Doesn't work that way. But this guy, initially, he bragged about it, and then he apologized, and now hundreds of thousands of people filed a complaint to RSPCA and the authorities to actually have a court case about this. So this guy is now going to court. This one of the senior lawyers of the Remain campaign is now in trouble for breaking the law. Now, as you saw yesterday, we have announced our big Brexit victory rally. We're throwing a massive party on the 15th of January. That's a Wednesday. 15th of January at 6:30 p.m. in central London in Westminster. There's going to be a massive party with a lot of senior figures from the world of politics and media. We have Douglas Carswell, Steve Baker, Nigel Evans, Mike Graham. It would be good to obviously for you guys to join us. I have put the link in the description to sign up, but actually the tickets are already selling out really fast. So make sure that you book your tickets as soon as possible. It's going to be great, obviously, to have a few drinks with you guys and chat about Brexit and everything else. So I'll put that link in the description. Well, we're going to be covering a lot of things when it comes to the Labour leadership elections in the next couple of days. So as I said, make sure you subscribe to the channel and click on that bell next to it. If you want to follow me on social media, you can find the details, Twitter and Instagram on the screen. I'm Tousi, and I'll see you guys tomorrow in the next video.